Hey guys, it's Mike with another Guild of Guardians video. We're back for epic Guardian gear. So we touched base on the legendary Guardian gear a couple days back. Now we're going to take a peek at the epic Guardian gear. So on the list, we don't have quite everybody. Some notable people we're missing is Palmera, as well as Tuskrog. But we're going to go through several of the pieces of gear. We're not going to go through everybody. I think like Telva's in here, Zara's crown. So there's a few that we are going to skip. But we're going to kind of touch base on some of the ones of more used characters. So starting at the top, we're going to start with Doro's whip, move on to Aloria's helm, Derda's crossbow, which we've talked about a little bit on the channel already. That will move us into Ikam's skull, Flix's necklace. I thought there was one other one in here somewhere, but we'll go through and see what makes sense. And then down, there was Quitari's chain. So we're going to go over those 6 today, and then if you do have more questions, by all means, check out, again, shout out to Woody, put this together on Medium, an awesome list. It's very comprehensive about all the different abilities that can be upgraded and how those upgrades work. So again, to briefly recap, the Guardian gear, when you pull it, you're going to be able to get them with endless tokens, and the epic ones go for 3,000, the legendary ones go for 6,000. You're going to get one of 3 stats as a primary stat: attack, defense, or HP. And then you're going to have the ability to get an added benefit for one added benefit for each of the abilities of the Guardian. So an epic Guardian has 3 abilities, a legendary Guardian has 4. So each ability is going to have its own way of enhancing that Guardian piece of gear. So there's going to be 3 different versions of enhancements plus the 3 different main stats and any combination thereof. Now with Gruff's Forge and being able to re-roll both the percentage that you want attack, defense, or HP, that becomes significantly less relevant because just with a few rubies you can get whatever you want. And then you just kind of roll through these. To change this one is a little more expensive, but it's probably still cheaper than buying another one of Doro's whips, so it gives you that opportunity to get exactly what you want. So let's jump into Doro and we're going to take a peek. The recommended buff on him, he is a warrior, would be attack. So that way he's doing a little more damage. If he is running into survivability issues, defense or HP will never be a bad thing, but ideally we would get him some attack there. If we go into Thorn Whip, enemies in the area of effect have 50% reduced HP recovery. So the Thorn Whip ability already is dealing 50% of attack as physical damage, and then every second for 6 seconds. And then if an enemy leaves by 2 meters, they become stunned, and then they're dealt a 500% attack. So on top of that, you'd be getting this added benefit of 50% heal reduction. So if an enemy is inside that area and they receive a heal, they will basically get half of what they should have gotten. And next ability is Poisonous Arrow. So on Poisonous Arrow, we're going to increase the base dizzy duration by 1 second. So on Poisonous Arrow, he's going to target the furthest 2 enemies, and every meter they are from each other, they get half a second. So this would basically start them off with 1 second, and then it would add up from there. So that would be another way of increasing those that stun. And then his final and his passive is Putrid Spore. Critical hits also increase attack speed by 50%. So in this case, he's going to increase his crit rate by 10%, and each critical hit increases attack by 5% for 10 seconds, and it's stackable. This is going to increase his attack speed as well by 5%, and I'm assuming it's probably also stackable. So of those, I'm not really sure which one I would prefer. Let's see what Woody has to say on that. So Woody leans towards Putrid Spore, with the critical hits also increasing his attack speed by 5%, and assuming that is stackable, it can move pretty quickly. He also mentions that if you're using him with Tavros or Aloria, somebody that speeds up your champions, you can actually get him moving pretty quickly. But he does say that there's not really a lot of use cases for him. He's not really sure if anybody's using him on their team, but if they are, that would probably be the one that he would lean towards. I would have to agree with that. I don't think any of these really stand out as amazing, to be honest. The extra second, I think, is pretty niche as far as how often that ability really works, and that 1 second additional stun, when that ability does work, you're probably already getting 2, 3, 4 seconds of stun. So 1 more second's probably not going to be a huge win. Enemies in the area reducing their HP recovery. How often are enemies in that area receiving heals? So it's kind of hard to say, but I do think Putrid Spores probably does have the most merit. but I don't know it's enough to really get Doro moving back into your squad. So next we have Aloria's Helm. Again, she's a warrior, so the primary stat would probably hopefully be attack. Again, if you're having a tough time keeping her alive, you might need defense or HP just to make her a little more durable, but she's there to do damage, so ideally you have that extra attack on her. The possible enhancements you have on Call of War, as the ability stands, she's going to charge a random enemy and cause knockback to all impacted enemies, dealing 250% of attack as physical damage to the final enemy, and all impacted enemies have their shields removed. So that could be interesting pending they have shields up, but if they did, that could be a really effective ability. But it doesn't seem to me that there's being a lot of times they're going to have shields, short of like endless mode. If you happen to pick up Bone Shield as a curse, that would be kind of a nice way of getting rid of it. But again, you're waiting for her AoE to do that, so a little bit of damage in front of that will probably remove those shields anyway. The second way you can enhance would be Victory Horn. Allies also recover 2% HP per second for up to 9 seconds. So that'd be kind of a cool way to help your healer out. Currently, Victory Horn increases all allies' attack and attack speed by 20%, and increase energy recovery by 20 per second for 5 seconds. So this would increase also 2% HP on top of that. So that would actually be probably pretty cool, because it's going to help her stay alive, and it's up to 9 seconds. So you could be up to 18% HP recovery over those 9 seconds, and again, it'll just help your healer. It's not going to replace Flix or Aquirus or JD as your healer, but it will definitely supplement and kind of help keep your team alive. Deflection is after resisting a control effect, reflect it back on the enemy. That's a pretty cool ability. I don't know how frequently that would be used. Like if you're going to get a stun or some sort of controlling effect put on your character, it would reflect it back on the enemy providing it. So that could be pretty beneficial. I think in like the Great Forge, we see people taking stuns all the time, but not every level has people that provide stuns or control effects. So it would be useful sometimes, and I think it would be pretty impactful when it is useful, but it's probably less than half the time you're using her. So of these, I'd probably say that I would lean towards Victory Horn, because I think it will help her stay survivable, and it would help your healer out and take a little bit of pressure off of her. But it kind of depends on how you're building her and how good of a healer you have, and whether or not that's something that's a benefit. So Woody's saying that his preference is going to be the Call of War buff, where you're breaking shields, and it's kind of a rare thing in the game. There's not a lot of people that do it, but he called out the same thing where you're stacking a few too many shields in endless mode. It could be effective. But I do personally think that Victory Horn is going to help you 100% of the time, versus Call of War is only going to help you when you're fighting enemies with shields, and she happens to ultimate before you get rid of those shields anyway. So that's, just again, it's the use case and how you're using her and how you've built her. So next we're going to look at Derda's crossbow. We've talked about this several times on the channel. Recommended stat buff is attack. She's a ranger, back row damage dealer, so that is ideal to get attack percent on there to make her hit a little bit harder. The first ability she can increase is Trick Shot. She gains 1% additional attack for every time an ally is assisted successfully, on top of the damage she's doing with Trick Shot. This obviously is going to be okay, but there's Linear Assault is where it's at here. Aquasphere duration is increased by 2 seconds. So instead of being 6 seconds, it's going to be for 8 seconds. On that, attack speed and movement speed is increased by 50%. So it'll just be a little bit longer period of time that's happening. But Linear Assault is going to get crit chance increased by 30%. That's on her passive ability. And basically, as she shoots, that arrow will penetrate enemies in a linear fashion, and it'll hit all the enemies in that line. And so by adding 30% crit rate to all of that, you get a little bit of crit rate on her kit, and then that added attack, she can be hitting pretty hard. This is specifically very effective in Arena because it takes so long for everybody to get to their ultimate abilities. Derizdas that have this with attack and crit rate, they're going to do a lot of damage before other teams can even get to their ultimate abilities, and this is going to be taking place on her basic attack. So right out of the gate, she's going to be starting to do this ability. So this is exactly the one you want, Linear Assault with attack percentage. You can also pair this with a Griselle, who gets the 50% attack increase with who she links to. And again, that's specific to Arena, but all of a sudden her attack level goes up by an additional 50%. She's hitting even harder with her basic with that added 30% crit rate, so she could be an absolute force in Arena. This also is very effective in adventure mode and other modes as well, but you definitely wouldn't want Griselle following Derda in those modes, because she's going to be making her use her trick shot more frequently, and that's not really what Derda is all about. She's actually really about her basic and Linear Assault. There have been people that don't actually upgrade Aquasphere at all, so that she does not use it. That way she just does her basic and the trick shot. So that is something to consider as well. Alright, next we're on to Ikam's Skull. Recommended stat buff is attack. And if you can get enough attack in his kit, this corruption can do some damage for you. It's kind of like a miniature Tianlong, where he's going to be hitting them over time. Everybody that's in that corrupted zone. And so attack. But as a tank, I could also make the argument that you'd want defense or HP here just to make him a little more tanky. But if you can get some damage into his kit, that's obviously going to be a great way to go. The enhancements on corruption, enemies within the area suffer 40% reduced attack. So not only are they going to be taking damage, they're also going to be hitting less hard. On taunting blow, the increase the taunt time to 10 seconds versus 5 seconds. So it's going to double the taunting time. Just keeping people using their basic, not utilizing their ultimate abilities and so forth. So that's probably not too bad. And then this one honestly is a tough one for him, because he charges to the furthest enemy and then he does attack. But that usually puts him in a position where he's surrounded by enemies, which is kind of creates a liability because there's nobody out there protecting him. So this is kind of one of those abilities that it's kind of a double-edged sword. You got to be careful with it and make sure you build him super tanky to withstand that kind of thing, or have a really good healer. So the third one is Safeguard. Every enemy with less than 30% increases HP recovery by 10%. So I think this is going to be HP recovery just on him, because it doesn't specify to all allies, but every enemy that has less than 30%. So if they have a team of 5 with less than 30%, he's going to be getting an extra 50% HP recovery when heals are coming on him. So that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure. I feel like it would be a very short time that they're less than 30%, because you're probably about to kill those enemies, and so once they die, then you wouldn't be getting the extra 10%. And if it was affecting your entire team, I think that would be pretty big. That would definitely be the winner. But just for him, I don't know that that's really going to be enough. So that being said, I do feel like I could do a use case for both corruption and taunting blow. If Safeguard was increasing HP for all the allies, I would probably lean that direction overall. But of the two of those, I mean, taunting blow is important because the idea behind Ikam is he's going in and he's going to take a back row damage dealer out of the game, make them run their basic on him. Now, if that happens to be Derda, that's probably a bad thing, because we just talked about her Linear Assault. If it's not Derda, then it's going to be a good thing, but it does put him in a vulnerable place. But by doubling the time of that taunt, it gives your team a lot more time to get through tanks and warriors to get to those back row damage dealers where they're not running their ultimate abilities. So I do think taunting blow could be a great solution there. But I could also make a case for corruption, because the area that he does where he's doing that damage over time effect is pretty large. So if all of the enemies in that area are also attacking with 40% less attack, that's pretty big. That's going to take a lot of pressure off of your team. So they're going to be doing less damage. That's going to take pressure off of your healer. So I could see that being a benefit as well. It just kind of depends on the use case for Ikam, but I think both of those would definitely have merit. Next we have Flix's Necklace. Recommended stat buff is attack. I would have to disagree with that heavily. I would go with HP all day long for Flix. The reason I would go with HP is all of her heals are based on HP. And And so the more, you want to stack as much HP on her as possible, and that way her heals are coming in, they're just going to be that much bigger. She does do kind of sneaky damage with her basic, but that's not why she's there. So I would go with HP on her necklace all day long. Possible enhancement on Fate Touch, you have excessive HP recovery creates a shield. So that would be pretty cool. So she's doing her main ability, she's over 6 seconds stacking heals, and basically anything over 100% of the heal is going to start creating a shield. So that's pretty good. Quiet Prayer, the lower the ally's current HP, the more Quiet Prayer restores up to 100% extra. So that's actually a pretty good one, because this is going to grab the lowest HP ally and recovers up to 42% of Flix's max HP over 6 seconds. But if they're lower in health, I'm not sure exactly, it says up to 100%. So I guess if they have 1% health, they're going to basically get twice the healing effect of that, and it probably scales as they get closer to full health. So that could be a huge win too. Basically, it's going to take your most vulnerable person and heal them maybe twice as fast, or some increased healing extra. So that's pretty good. Divine Blessing removes all debuffs on self. So on this, when she does her passive, she's going to remove all the debuffs on herself. That's clearly the one in the back for me. I kind of lean towards Quiet Prayer myself as far as the effectiveness. I think either Fate Touch or Quiet Prayer is going to do a lot of work. The excessive HP recovering, creating a shield, I think is going to be obviously be a benefit because you're not losing the effect of heals. Although I'm thinking about the outcome of that, and the reality is if you're getting shields, all of your people are on full health. So nobody's really in danger. Whereas Quiet Prayer, this person's actually in danger of dying, and they're going to get bigger heals because they're in danger of dying. So I think that's going to make you more survivable, just because it's going to pick. Now, this is going to be for a single target versus your entire team. But typically, the single target, I mean, it's pretty, I won't say it's rare, but usually one of your champions is close to dying. It's usually not two at the same time. So theoretically, this would work for them, get them healed up, and then she can move on to the next one. So it looks like Woody and I might disagree a little bit here. He's leaning towards Fate Touch. I do think Fate Touch is great, don't get me wrong. But I think personally I would prefer Quiet Prayer. The point he makes is valid about trying to get through waves quickly. And so in that, you're basically putting a shield on your entire team. If you're getting through the waves quickly, then they're not taking any damage that you need to really heal from. So he's helping, she's helping everybody out in that time. But I do think that when you do get into that spot where you're a little bit sketchy, and having those big heals come into that one player that really needs it could definitely be the way to go. But either of those, I think you won't be disappointed with either one of those. It's just kind of which one makes more sense to you and what situation you find yourself in more frequently. So the last one we're going to cover today is Qatari's Chain. Recommended stat buff. She's an assassin, so attack all day long. On Phantom Clone, the Phantom will now use Whirling Blade. So the Phantom's basically, she puts a Phantom behind each enemy. It's an AoE attack, and then she's doing damage to each of those enemies for 7 seconds. Whirling Blade is attack nearby enemy, dealing 190% of attack as physical damage. So she's basically going to be doing an extra 90% damage because she's using this other ability. Or the Phantoms will be using this other ability while they're behind them for the 7 seconds. So that one probably is going to be the best. So the second one is Whirling Blade. Stun hit enemies for 2 seconds. I'm not sure about the verbiage there, but I'm assuming when we go to that nearest enemy and hit them, they're also going to take a 2-second stun. I don't think that's necessarily bad, but this is not going to be AoE. Now, if you could get both of these on her, that would be amazing, because if all of her Phantoms are hitting with Whirling Blade and that's causing a 2-second stun, that'd be incredible, but you can't put both these pieces on her at the same time. So I would still lean towards Phantom Clone, get that extra damage out there, because that's what she's in there to do. And then Backstab, basic attack, have a 20% chance to teleport Qatari behind an enemy, triggering Backstab and causing stun for 2 seconds. So on Backstabs or passive, she increases damage dealt from behind by 40%. So every time she runs a basic, she'd have a 20% chance to teleport behind the enemy, triggering backstab. So anytime she is behind the enemy, she's doing more damage to that enemy. And again, with the phantoms, that does translate as well, because her phantoms go behind the enemy right here. So behind each enemy to get that extra 40%. So I think the 20% chance isn't quite, I mean, it's 1 out of 5. So that's probably going to happen maybe once or twice per battle, depending on how fast you're going through the waves. Whereas this Phantom getting the Whirling Blade effect with the 190% damage, and that's if it's leveled up too. So you get that up to 270 versus the Phantom Clone where you're dealing 100% damage over 7 seconds, and then it levels up to 10 seconds. So you're going to be getting a lot more damage over that time. And then on top of which you're getting that added backstab on those clones. So I'd have to say Phantom Clone would definitely win for me. And then just looking at what Woody wrote down here as well, he's saying the Phantom Clone is the one. Now he seems a little bit low on Qatari. I think as far as assassins in the game, she is probably one of the best. At least from the core 1 assassins. I haven't played with all of the founder assassins or the Gen 1 assassins. But the thing with her AoE ability is when she's in that mode, she is invincible. She doesn't take any damage. And she can be there for 10 seconds. So she can kind of cycle in and out of that pretty quickly. And therefore, there's only specific times where she does take damage. And I think as a assassin, it's hard to keep them alive, so the time that she's basically invincible from being hit as the Phantoms, I think it works out pretty well in her favor. But that being said, if you're looking for an overall assassin with survivability in their kit and so forth, I'd probably lean towards Ashwin if you have the gear to get the crit rate on him. But I will say, oh, puppies are going crazy. I will say that in the Full House event, on the free-to-play account, I had Qatari to help out my Tianlong doing AoE damage, and the 5th room in that event was significantly easier with Qatari doing damage as well as Tianlong. I'm going to go take care of that real quick, and I'll be right back. I apologize for that. So I do think that if you can get enough attack on Qatari and she's doing enough damage for you, she can carry you through some content with some added AoE damage. And I think to supplement her with another big AoE damage dealer, you might be able to get through waves significantly quicker as long as she stays alive. And that's a big qualifier there. But I think that she definitely does have merit as an assassin in the game. And I think she's one of the easier assassins to keep alive because of the invincibility during her Phantom. So if we take a look at this list, there's quite a few that we didn't touch base today, like Telva's shoulders. Also, Palmera was not on the list, but she's one of the most used epics in the game. Kreese is on the list. His helm is here. So there are some pieces that if you want to come in, and again, thank you, Woody, for putting this together. It's going to help us out quite a bit. But you have like Priel's bracers on here and so forth. If you're looking at Tuskrog's belt, I did cover that in yesterday's video regarding the Gruff's Forges Live. And we go over the 3 options that can improve Tuskrog, even though that's not on the list here. So if you're curious about which ones those are and which one you want on your team, that would be a good video to check out that's in there. I think this is a great resource to use to kind of figure out how we want to better our teams. And now with Gruff's Forge in the game, it's even more relevant. Because before, it was really just whatever you get is what you get. But now you can go in here and say, hey, I really want attack and I want linear assault. And this was a very lucky pull that I had to get those 2 things together. But you can see I bought 5 Deriza's crossbow to get that combination of things. Whereas I could have just bought 1 and say, here, I got defense. Well, I probably want to leave defense on that one. But let's say here I wanted to go, here's a good example right here. This is Aquarius' Sphere. You absolutely want attack here because her heals are based on her attack. So I don't want HP. I'm going to go ahead and refine this using 200 rubies. And now all of a sudden I have I'm gonna watch it take a while. I have attack. We're gonna keep it. Now I have the stat that I wanted. Then from here I can go down here, and this one takes quite a few tokens on the endless tokens. But if I don't want protective ward, I could go through and see what else I do want. Aquarius was another one. Her sphere wasn't on that list. So I'll probably try to put together a video for Palmera and Aquarius because they're both heavily used epics that don't have that information available, or try to find that information and pass it along to you. But that's what I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you spending your time with me here today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.